In some ways, with the arrival of media, we've always been, according to Marshall McLuhan, extending our senses or sensory motor system into the environment. And so with the arrival of new digital media, especially with new sensors, we have potentially new opportunities to create new displays, as well as new ways to increase and sense the information. So there's been a general trend, I think, in the development of new media, primarily to cover more of the sensory motor system, to have more displays that cover more of the visual field, or potentially worn if they get a little lighter, as well as the quality of 3D information in the audio realm, and increasingly some information that is delivered to the tactile senses. Now, part of the challenge, of course, has been, in terms of increasing our sensorium, is to connect that up to new sensor data that is now distributed in the environment. And part of the challenge, and the challenge that's currently in play in the development of technology, is to find new ways for that display technology, the visual displays, the auditory displays, the tactile displays, to handle information that is now flooding from all the users who are giving off information and all the sensors in the environment that allow us to be aware of the environment around us.
Yes, is the short answer. I think we can. We can change the way people perceive the world relatively easily with digital technology and relatively cheaply now. And we can also find and exploit a lot of new ways of doing things in the physical world. So I'm particularly interested in interactions between the person and the physical world around them. And I think we can do a lot in that area.
I do think we can develop fundamentally new ways of interacting with the world. In the Seeds project, one of the things we're exploring is making use of people's subconscious responses to data presentations, understanding what those responses are as they're sensed, and in real time being able to alter what's presented to users in a data visualization based on their responses.
I think it's possible, but of course we don't understand what it is the person is interested in. That's the starting point. So we need to know, we need to tap when the person, perhaps without their knowing it, can see interesting patterns in data that could be relevant. So we need to monitor the user's conscious and unconscious reactions. Another important thing is that, perhaps related to the first question, if we can transform the way the information is presented, perhaps put it in another medium. So if you listen to some data, instead of poring over tables and figures, maybe if you hear those represented as a stream of sound, you'll spot different things in the data. So I think there's a lot of ways we can exploit new senses and new ways of presenting data to get at understanding large amounts of data. But you have to have some means of monitoring the person to know when you're doing something relevant.
So one of the big challenges at the moment is the data deluge, and that's what Seeds is attacking head on. Fundamentally, what we're doing in Seeds is looking to use subconscious processing to add to people's conscious abilities to process data. So when you've got a data deluge, tons and tons of data, trying to make sense of it is a challenge. And if we can help ourselves in addressing that challenge by the system, the Confluent computer system, being able to effectively understand your state as a user and highlight to you things that you're interested in or that you're showing a response to, even if you're not aware of showing a response to, then that's like giving you an extra sense almost, and that's what we're trying to do in the Seeds project.
Now that becomes, like I said, the challenge, because now we are at that interface where information is flowing at a very, very high rate. In fact, the major industry right now currently is big data analysis, or so big data is sort of like the new industry, which is ways in which to analyze the massive amounts of data that all our sensors and all our digital activity is creating. That is all very well from a statistical viewpoint, but if the actual user is to make use of all that data, it cannot be presented just purely in mathematical formulation, but needs to be presented as it's always been presented in sensory formats. The most promising technologies for actually looking at that are ways to visualize data in an augmented reality environment, so that information about the environment can be blended with the digital knowledge about that environment in a sensorial way that's three-dimensional and overlaid on the environment. So probably I think what we're looking at is with the arrival of VR systems, where you'll see visualizations about the world around you, or about your state, about the state of your family, about the state of some projects that you're working on, presented to you in a sensory fashion, in the presence of either spatial displays, maybe in terms of agents. So for example, in the area of graphing, there's always been the representation of Chernoff faces, which are ways in which data is represented by the shape and structure of a face. It's very intuitive, and people can pick out the differences between sets of data just by looking at the faces. And so I think you'll see a lot of movement towards that kind of technology that will be a blend of visualization, so it's more spatial, and then more agent-based visualization, so information presented in the form of a humanoid or animal form that represents the state of a system, because that's really how our brains work, either on the agent side or the spatial side.
To my mind, the barriers between the real and the virtual are already being broken down. So when you're walking around the real world, there's virtual traces of your location recorded by your mobile network operator probably. You're checking in actively to different locations, for example, is marking in the virtual world, digital space, where you are in the physical world. So when the spaces are merging already, what's interesting in human-computer confluence is that human responses, both explicit and implicit, are being layered on top of that. And that gives range to a whole plethora of neat applications and service scenarios.
I think we already are breaking the barriers between the real and the virtual. For example, when you see people walking down the street talking on their mobile phones, they're navigating the physical world and talking to a friend or an employer. So we do that, and I think we'll clearly do it more and more. We have lots of virtual equipment in our cars, for example, the thing that tells us where to find the person we're looking for. But this is coming more and more. We will effectively use the digital in our physical activities. So that's, I think, breaking the divide. Technically, psychologically, to do that, you have to make it effortless, so that you don't endanger the driver by the way you present information, for example. So it's got to be, ideally, it would be a seamless interaction. No break between the digital and the physical, but we don't really have that yet. Perhaps the mobile phone through the earpiece is one of the few examples.
That is part of that major challenge right now. So basically, with the arrival of mobile phones, we've had our mobile phones, and the big explosion for the last 20 years has been basically making information mobile, so that it's attached to the body, but in a very crude way. So what we've done basically is just made a very small portable computer. And so as someone who participated in the introduction of the first portable computer, I've just seen of course, we've just in the process of blending and making the smaller computer, but still, it's a computer that is increasingly aware of the environment. Now it has digital data, so it has GPS data, so it knows where it is in space. It has a digital compass, so it knows where it's oriented in space. Increasingly, it knows the tilt of the information, but as a display, it's somewhat limited. And so with this spatial information, there is the possibility, with the arrival of augmented reality glasses and maybe better displays, to then take this digital information, which now just sits on the screen, and blend it into the environment so that it sits attached to the objects in the world and much easier to interact with. It still is part of our body, but is not necessarily the display system that we use. So the goal then is to blend, as we're talking even today, blend digital information into the physical information so that there's sort of both attached to it. So instead of watching me talk about myself necessarily, there may be digital information attached to me that you would be seeing through this video, that he's a professor here, that he works at this location. And these are digital tags that might be relevant if you wanted to inquire about that. Or other information might be attached necessarily to the person when you're interacting with them. And so that's all this information that is about this person could be present and attached to that person depending on what you need for your interaction. Instead of having to necessarily ask or what have you, you can inquire digitally. And that allows us to maybe layer a tremendous amount of data into the environment and still have it appear like a natural environment does. This is, I think, one of the interesting ones as well, because we've looked in the past, looking at primarily technology as this world that is separate from us and not really attached to us. And if you see currently the way we think about technology, eventually they were just tools. They were tools that sat there. We sometimes spent some time with them. Even computers were separated as tools and thought about as tools. But now they're increasingly seen as environments. And environments for cognition. They're environments that extend our bodies, extend our thinking. And so human-computer confluence, then, is the ways in which those two aspects of it, the way we behave, the way we live, the way we interact with information, and the world of computation, is blended in a way which is perfectly seamless and potentially wedded into the way we work, in which the technology becomes a natural extension of us. So that it doesn't seem exactly like this foreign environment, where actually data and information is seen as a natural extension of human activity. And so that blending is actually increasing the focus of originally human-computer interaction, when it was necessary to get computers, for example, people working with very difficult early computational systems like fighter planes and nuclear power plants. This is when you see the beginning of human-computer interaction. And to the new realm where basically all information is potentially now created to be relatively easy to use and integrated into everyone's life instead of just information workers specifically.
Human-computer confluence fundamentally puts the user at the center of the experience of data. So that means responsive environments that understand what you as a user may want to do, or how you feel, or what you're going to be doing next, or where you've been. So it's the system understanding you through a proper understanding of you and your preferences and your abilities and your typical behaviours. And then inferring through your current behaviour, your state, what you want to do, where you want to go next, and responding appropriately to you. So if you're appearing tired, it can warn you that you're feeling tired and perhaps suggest to you where you can get a nice coffee to bolster yourself. Equally, if you're getting a bit overexcited, Confluence system may be able to calm you down and say, yes, you may be excited about all this future technology, but just be a bit patient.
Well, for me, it's about the technology becoming part of the self, so that you're not aware of the technology. Like, I'm not really aware of my body if it's working properly, unless I'm ill. then I have to get it fixed. The same way, I should not be aware of the technology itself when I use it. So I should just be able to interact with what the technology provides me with and with the physical world at the same time. So it's really human environment confluence, where the environment is a blend of physical and virtual.